Okay, so today we're just going to continue on with containers. The containers category, basically looking at App Runner. So AWS App Runner, if I go into the hands-on here, um, it says that App Runner is a fully managed service that makes it easy for developers to quickly deploy containerized web applications and APIs at scale and with no prior infrastructure experience required. So one of the veins of people's lives is having to maintain and build infrastructure. So literally for this exam, like all of the rest of the actual hands-on here, we're not teaching what actual app runner is and how to configure it properly and how to secure it properly and all that kind of stuff. What we're basically just trying to do is make sure that we actually just understand what the actual service is and try and get it up and running as quickly as possible so we get some experience basically for the exam that we've actually had use of App Runner before previously. Um, so basically, if we kind of go in here, this version of the hands-on I wasn't a kind of fan on because basically it's talking about this AWS CDK, and if you kind of go into like what actual CDK is, um, it's about a kind of a cloud development kit that you basically have to get installed and set up and all of this kind of sort of stuff. And honestly, for the exam, this just was a lot of kind of work, right? I mean, this is probably a really good experience and tutorial to basically kind of walk through, but I really didn't want to kind of do all of this kind of sort of stuff here. I just wanted to get something up and running on App Runner um, as quickly as possible. So, I'm gonna close all of this kind of stuff off, like this CDK requirements and installing the CDK, CLI, and creating your first project on CDK. And, it just seemed an awful lot kind of just to get something kind of up and running kind of quickly. So what I did was I basically went over and I was having a look to sort of see if there is actually a um, AWS container here, which basically just has a little kind of banner which basically sort of says, welcome to AWS App Runner. So you can kind of follow through this kind of tutorial here if you kind of really want how to deploy App Runner here. But really, what I'm going to kind of do here is I just want to use that actual little container here that's already running because I just don't want to kind of spend kind of time um, making a container just for this quick demo. So here's basically the location, and you can sort of see here it's a public ECR AWS containers. Hello App Runner. Okay, so basically, so to see you can actually see here it's really kind of nice in this sense with the AWS because you can just click on kind of launch with App Runner here if you really kind of wanted to. So you know I'm trying to kind of just remember this kind of service for the exam itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to sort of do it probably both ways. So first of all, I'm going to go in and I'm going to search for App Runner. And when you find App Runner here, basically I'm going to make it a favorite and I'm going to sort of say create an App Runner service. So, you can obviously read the documentation about App Runner here, but I'm just going to create a service here. Here I'm going to sort of say I'm going to leave it a container registry deploy service using container image stored in a container registry, provided Amazon ECR container images stored in a private ECR. So now I actually have to go um, and just update that to be public because I want this is the public gallery. So because you can see here Amazon ECR public gallery. I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. And remember, I have no services right now. I've created nothing. I've no services right now. Basically here it just sort of says deployment settings here, manual, start each deployment yourself using AppRunner console or CLI. Go on to next. Service name I want to kind of, just AWS app runner test. Here, you can kind of specify the virtual CPU and the virtual memory. I'm going to assume right now that these are kind of okay to set. Um, it should be should be fine. Um, I'm going to, let's sort of see what kind of port we need here. CPU and memory, just 2 gig, yeah, that's fine. Port, it sort of says 800, sorry, 8000. So if you kind of go in to down here, you can actually sort of see that the port here was actually 8000. So I'm obviously just kind of looking at this to sort of see, you know, what kind of type of details. So here was your link to your image, and here was your port basically. So I'm just going to copy that, paste in here. I haven't added any environment variables here. Um, I'm just going to close this for a second, but I haven't added any kind of environment variables here, you know. Um, that's kind of optional. But you can sort of see here with the secrets manager here, you can create. So it says here, this is what MKDev was kind of referring to here, right? So what we actually have to do is says copy the following IAM policy template to your instance role to enable permissions to reference secrets and configurations from AWS Secrets Manager. So basically, what we have to do is we actually have to copy this here. The port is okay. We have to copy this here. We have to go into our IAM service here. And let me just see. So I kind of played around with this a little bit. And basically, in the end, what I basically did was I created a new role here. So let me kind of show you what the kind of problem here with this was. You know, the app runner basically needs to access this repository here. And this repository is basically um, up in GitHub. And basically what I kind of found was, you know, you have to kind of play around a little bit with the actual permissions here. So when I kind of created my service, this is my running service here. So everything's kind of working here. But I kind of found a few issues with this in the sense where I had kind of started going in and I basically wanted to recreate that policy permission. Now it didn't work for me first time. So what I kind of ended up doing was I basically went up and I created this app runner test role. So I just created this test role. The problem here was that you know, when you kind of go in to create a service, so let me kind of just kind of go back to kind of creating a service here. So let's sort of see app runner. Kind of just take it back a little bit. So when you're going to go in to create a service, so you're in app runner, you want to create a service, you're going to you've sort of specified all of these items here. Now here was where it kind of threw me a little bit because basically what it sort of said was, you know, basically here what I basically spoke about was this IAM policy template. Now, you know, I'm sure the best practice is obviously to use an IAM policy template. I mean, that kind of makes most sense that you basically have a kind of secret and a key. I didn't want to kind of spend that time trying to kind of get this to work. So what I basically did was I went into security here. So here is kind of security, and you basically have to specify a role here. Now, this role here that I'm specifying here is this role. Okay, this role has policy permissions of app runner here. So I just kind of granted policy permissions, you know, for everything on the that role. So this was like a custom role that I created. So I just went into roles, you know, create role here, choose AWS service, and I couldn't find one for app runner. So I was kind of like searching here just to say, okay, so maybe it's a task or something. But basically I couldn't find anything here for app runner. So what I did in the end was I created one for EC2, and I just created the role as normal, as kind of like default EC2. And basically then what I did was in my kind of role, so if I kind of go back to my role here, go back to my role, let's just see, I want to leave that app runner here, go back into my role. If you go into trusted relationships, I had to update this to basically sort of say, you know, allow me, allow this kind of role to be able to access the tasks for app runner, and assume that role. So the action is to assume that role and basically allow it, because it was kind of strange because this role, as many times as I kind of created it and recreated it, it basically wouldn't show up here. It never showed up here. It was only when I actually added this item here for the trust relationships here, you know, um, that's when basically it actually showed up. And that kind of makes sense because here you sort of say the service is a tasks app runner Amazon AWS.com. So what I wanted to kind of do was I kind of found this, I was kind of looking around for that, kind of going, I must be doing something kind of strange here. But basically, sort of see a post here where a person is basically asking the exact same question, and then Amazon are replying basically sort of saying, well, you actually have to provide this trust policy for the app runner role instance, and then it will start showing up in the app runner console. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put this into the notes here so that we kind of don't forget it. And I'm also going to sort of say here, note here. So this is going to be another note. I'm just putting this into our notes or whatever, and then I'll kind of check this in, obviously. But basically, it's just a kind of reminder that, you know, it didn't work for me first time, because I couldn't find that role. The role just didn't seem to kind of exist. But then what I did was, in the end, I kind of created this app test role. You know, I'm going to delete this now, kind of in a few minutes. But just as a kind of proof of concept, I created this app test role. I granted permission policies to kind of everything related to app runner. I mean, you're probably not going to do that. Obviously, you're going to specify the kind of policies. But this tutorial was not on policies or roles or anything, so I didn't want to get kind of too far down um, in the kind of weeds about this. But basically, you can sort of see that it was actually an EC2 instance role that I actually created, and then I just created this trust, relationship, and then when I went back in to create my service, my role was here. So App Runner picked up this role then, and then basically everything worked. So the kind of first time it didn't work, and what I kind of ended up doing then was just I created two versions of this. I created two services here. You can still see app, and basically they're both using the same role. So if you look at App Runner Test 2, it's a status of running. This is your default domain. So this is the URL that you're actually provided. The source is the hello app, which is a reminder it's in this one. So this is meant to be our source. So this here we can also kind of sort of say source used. So we can just put that in there just to make sure that we remind ourselves. So this was the source. Again, I didn't want to kind of create, go in and be creating anything, but basically when you kind of click into the source, you can sort of see that AWS containers, they basically provide you all of the information here, and you can just basically copy that link over here, and then basically, going into your services here, that's that source. That's exactly that source. So I did not create anything kind of new for this. But then, you can sort of see in your logs, everything was happening, the activity, it created the service successfully, the metrics, you could sort of see everything was kind of starting to come true. So that was kind of how, if I kind of go back into services and go back to App Runner 2, and basically go back to create service deployment logs, you can sort of see successfully pulled your image from ECR. So that was ECR, which is where basically this is the public repository here for Amazon. It basically pulled it down here. Successfully deployed the application completed, or deployment completed. I mean, it wasn't overly clear to me from the tutorial of how, from Amazon's point of view, how am I actually creating that role. So But again, we'll kind of go into that when we kind of get into roles and permissions and all that kind of sort of stuff. But I also kind of put a really kind of good link about setting up this type of kind of information about roles and all into the actual notes as well. So try and kind of watch those as well. But for now, quick test. I created the role. The role is created and accessed into the service, and then everything just worked. So you can sort of see basically when I run the URL, if I go into service here, if I run this URL here, you can sort of see it comes up straight away. So I mean, it says we're live. Your service is successfully deployed. AWS App Runner. There's things that I wouldn't kind of like about it, but again, it's just about kind of learning quickly about kind of AWS App Runner and trying to get something up as quickly as possible. Just kind of using this service just to actually make sure that you learn about it. So, okay, thank you.